Ambassador John Miller felt his heart pound as the evidence appeared on the massive holographic display. The images floated in the center of the Galactic Council chamber, visible to all 87 species representatives. The secret surveillance satellites orbiting Earth, the hidden listening posts on Mars and Europa, the infiltration of human communication networks. As you can see, the insect-like Zextrol representative chittered. These security measures were necessary for galactic stability. Humanity's rapid military expansion required oversight. Miller exchanged a look with his colleague, Linda Hayes. Her face had turned pale, but her eyes burned with anger. They had suspected monitoring for years, but the scale of the intrusion was shocking. How long? Linda asked, her voice cutting through the chamber's murmurs. The Zextrol representative's antennae twitched. I fail to understand the relevance of. Linda slammed her hand on the smooth metal of the council table. The sharp sound echoed across the vast chamber. How long have you been spying on our people? She demanded. The High Counselor, an ancient blue-skinned Vexari with eyes that had seen millennia, leaned forward. Ambassador Hayes, please maintain diplomatic protocol. These measures were approved by Council majority 37 years ago. 37 years, Miller repeated quietly. Before we even joined the Council. Before we were invited to the table. Miller stood slowly. Around him, the alien representatives shifted in their various seats, exoskeletons clicking, tentacles curling, and breathing apparatuses humming. He had spent 5 years learning to read their body language. Today, he saw only arrogance and condescension. Humanity joined this council in good faith, Miller said. We opened our borders. We share our technology. We compromised on resource claims, and all this time, you've been treating us like criminals under surveillance. The Mecteri delegate, a tall humanoid with silvery skin, spoke next. Humans advance too quickly. Your military development is concerning. The council merely sought to ensure peaceful intentions. Linda rose beside Miller. By violating our sovereignty, by installing backdoors in our communication systems, by monitoring our private citizens. Miller touched the communicator on his wrist and spoke clearly so everyone could hear. Captain Williams, prepare the ships for immediate departure. A shocked murmur swept through the chamber. The High Counselor stood, towering nearly 9 feet tall. Ambassador Miller, this is most irregular. The council session is not concluded. We have 17 more items on today's agenda alone. We're withdrawing from talks, Miller announced. All talks. Earth is reassessing its position in the Galactic Council effective immediately. The chamber erupted in voices. The translator in Miller's ear struggled to keep up with the overlapping alien languages. You cannot simply leave. The trade agreements require. This is unprecedented. Linda faced the room, her voice rising above the chaos. We trusted you to treat us as equals. You chose to treat us as subjects. Humanity will chart its own path among the stars. Commander Frank Nelson entered the chamber with 4 security officers. Their Blue Earth Defense Fleet uniforms stood out sharply against the ornate council surroundings. Ambassadors, your transport is ready, Nelson said, his hand resting near his sidearm. The Vexari High Counselor moved forward. Ambassador Miller, please. This reaction is extreme. Let us discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss, Miller replied. Your surveillance ends now, or any diplomatic relations between Earth and the Council end permanently. As the human delegation moved toward the exit, urgent communications flooded their personal devices. Miller turned them all off without reading them. Back on Earth, President Ellen Wright watched the feed from the Council with her military and diplomatic advisors. The room was silent as they witnessed humanity's representatives walk out. And so it begins, she said softly. Send word to all colonies and outposts. Full alert status. Recall all diplomatic personnel from Council space. She looked around the table at the grim faces. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare for isolation. And possibly worse. The Earth Defense Fleet ships disengaged from the massive Council station, their engines glowing blue against the blackness of space as they prepared to jump home. Behind them, panic erupted in the Galactic Council. News of humanity's withdrawal spread faster than light through quantum networks. Within hours, every species in the 87-member Galactic Council knew that humans had walked away from the table. On the mining colony of New Montana, Steve Garcia looked up at the night sky with worry. The small human settlement sat on an asteroid rich with rare minerals, right at the edge of Council space. Less than 20 miles away, purple lights from the Zlorn mining operation glowed in the darkness. "Any word from Earth?" asked Maria Lopez, the colony's chief engineer. Steve shook his head. "Communication is spotty. Something about the Council trying to limit our transmissions." Maria pointed to the distant Zlorn facility. "Their ships have been moving closer to our western dig site all day." Steve knew what that meant. The Zlorn had wanted the western tunnels for years. With humanity suddenly isolated, they weren't wasting any time. "Get everyone to the emergency bunker," Steve said, "and power up the defense grid." "It's not much of a grid," Maria replied. "Just 3 outdated turrets." Steve checked his rifle. "Then let's hope Earth sends help soon." Across the galaxy on the massive trading hub known as Junction Station, Captain Diane Murphy of the survey vessel Northern Star faced her own problems. "What do you mean our docking permission is revoked?" she asked the 4-armed station manager. The blue-skinned alien's eyes blinked nervously. "Council directive. All human ships must clear special security protocols." "We need fuel and supplies," Diane said. "We've been mapping the Cygnus sector for 6 months. We barely have enough life support to reach the next system." "I am sorry, Captain," the manager said, not looking sorry at all. "Perhaps if you contacted your government for clarification on your political situation." Diane's first officer, Jack Wilson, stepped forward. "Our engineers helped rebuild your station's atmosphere processors last year when they failed. We saved hundreds of lives." The manager's lower arms twitched. "That was before your species insulted the Council." "We need fuel," Diane repeated. "What will it take?" The manager named a price 3 times the normal rate. Diane bit back her anger and agreed. As they walked away with their overpriced fuel authorization, Jack whispered, "This is happening everywhere. My brother on the transport ship Denver says they were denied entry to Proxima Station entirely." Back at the Galactic Council headquarters, emergency sessions continued without pause. The Teleran representative, a tall being with silver skin and no visible eyes, addressed the assembly. "Humans are dangerous and unpredictable. We should establish a containment perimeter around their territory until they agree to return to Council authority." The green-tentacled Nith-Ari delegate rose in opposition. "Isolating them will only push humans further away. Their technology and resources are too valuable to lose. We should negotiate." The council chamber divided into shouting factions. Some demanded military action. Others called for patience. A few suggested offering concessions. In a private chamber off the main hall, the High Counselor met with the oldest members of the council. The ancient Vexari's blue skin had paled with stress. "The humans know about the surveillance now. What they don't know is why we felt it necessary," the High Counselor said. A Mecteri elder nodded. "And they must not discover the truth. If humans learn what lies beyond the outer rim, if they learn what's coming, they would either flee or fight," said another elder. "Neither serves our purpose." The High Counselor looked at the star map showing Earth's position. "The withdrawal is unfortunate but temporary. They will return when resources grow scarce." "And if they don't return?" asked the Mecteri. "Then we implement the contingency plan," the High Counselor replied. "Earth is too strategically important to leave uncontrolled." As darkness fell across the galaxy, millions of humans looked to the stars with new uncertainty. On 1,000 worlds, humans and aliens who had lived and worked together for decades suddenly found a gulf between them. No one knew what would come next, but everyone sensed that something fundamental had changed in the delicate balance of galactic power. In a hidden chamber deep within the council station, 7 beings gathered around a circular table. The light was dim, revealing only their outlines. At the head sat Sorbin, the council intelligence director. His gray skin and large eyes marked him as a member of the secretive Voth species. The human's departure was no accident. Sorbin said, "It was engineered." The representatives looked at each other in surprise. "By whom?" asked a delegate with silvery scales. Sorbin touched a control panel. A holographic display appeared, showing the sleek ships of the Mecteri consortium. "Our surveillance program has existed for decades without discovery. The information was deliberately leaked by Mecteri agents. On Earth, in a windowless room beneath the Rocky Mountains, intelligence analyst Karen Peterson stared at her screen. For 3 days straight, she had been analyzing strange signals captured by Earth's deep space arrays. "Found something," she said to her supervisor, Bill Roberts. "These transmissions between Mecteri ships. They're encrypted, but I can see patterns." Bill leaned over her shoulder. "What kind of patterns?" "They're studying us," Karen said. "Every transmission contains detailed data packets about our military capabilities, weapons systems, fleet movements, combat tactics." Bill frowned. Why would they care so much? "The Mecteri have always been neutral in council politics." "That's not all," Karen continued. "The oldest transmissions date back 50 years. They've been watching us longer than the council has." Miles away, at the National University Research Center, Dr. Alan Cooper received an urgent message. As the leading xenobiologist with security clearance, he had been tasked with reviewing classified files on Mecteri biology. Alan scrolled through the data, then stopped suddenly. "This can't be right," he muttered. The genetic markers showed clear signs of artificial modification. The Mecteri had engineered themselves for war. Their enhanced reflexes, reinforced skeletal structure, and advanced cellular regeneration all pointed to one conclusion: a species preparing for major conflict. But against whom? The Council had maintained peace for 2,000 years. Alan opened another file, this one containing intercepted Mecteri communications. As he read, his eyes widened. Mentions of the Droveri threat appeared repeatedly. References to the coming storm and preparation timeline painted a disturbing picture. The Droveri, an ancient empire from beyond known space, long thought to be just a myth used to frighten children on 100 worlds. Alan connected to the secure line directly to the President's office. "Madam President, I think I know what's happening. The Mecteri aren't our enemies. They want us as allies against something worse." 3 days later, President Ellen Wright's personal shuttle traveled to Jupiter's orbit. There, in the shadow of the gas giant, another ship waited. Sleek and silver, with no visible engines or weapons, the Mecteri vessel dwarfed the human shuttle. Inside a neutral meeting chamber constructed for this moment, President Wright faced the Mecteri ambassador, Trelkin. His silver skin reflected the soft lighting, and his eyes, 3 of them, regarded her with intensity. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting, Madam President," Trelkin said. His voice was melodic, almost hypnotic. "Your people orchestrated our withdrawal from the Council," President Wright said. "It wasn't a question." Trelkin nodded once. "We did. The Council has become restrictive, especially concerning military development. And why would that matter to you?" Trelkin touched a device on his wrist. A hologram appeared between them, showing a massive fleet of black ships moving through space. The Droveri Empire lies beyond the outer rim. For 10,000 years, they have expanded, conquered, and consumed. For the last 500 years, they have been watching Council space, preparing. President Wright studied the hologram. And the Council knows. The elder species know. They chose containment as their strategy. Keep all species under tight control. Limit military growth. Hope the Droveri look elsewhere. And your strategy? Trelkin's three eyes blinked in sequence. Alliance, technology exchange, preparation for the inevitable conflict. He paused. Humans possess something unique in the galaxy, Madam President. You innovate under pressure. You thrive in conflict. You want to weaponize humanity, President Wright said flatly. I want to save the galaxy, Trelkin replied. With humanity's help. The United Nations meeting hall buzzed with angry voices. On the main screen, President Wright had just finished explaining the Mecteri offer. The room divided quickly into those who supported alliance with the Mecteri and those who wanted to return to Council protection. Defense Minister Paul Bennett stood up. This is the opportunity we've waited for. The Mecteri are offering technology centuries beyond our own. No more Council restrictions on our military development. And in exchange, they want us to fight their war, said Diplomatic Corps Director Susan Mitchell. Her voice was calm but firm. A war against an enemy we know nothing about except what the Mecteri tell us. At least the Mecteri are honest about their intentions, Hall replied. The Council lied to us for decades. Susan shook her head. We'd be trading one master for another. As Earth's leaders argued, the consequences of withdrawal spread across human space. On the view screen, emergency signals flashed from 3 colonies, New Montana, Proxima Centauri, and Ta City. Council enforcement fleets have established blockades, reported Admiral Jason King. They're cutting off supply lines, claiming it's for security until our political situation is resolved. President Wright frowned. How many civilians? Over 30,000 total across all 3 colonies. Food and medical supplies will become critical within weeks. In the back of the room, Captain Joe Williams listened with growing anger. His ship, the Earth battlecruiser Defiance, was one of the most powerful vessels in the human fleet, and his sister lived on New Montana with her 2 children. Captain Williams left the meeting early. 2 hours later, against direct orders, the Defiance broke orbit and jumped toward New Montana. Admiral King burst into the president's office. Williams has gone rogue. He's taking the Defiance to break the blockade. President Wright looked up from her desk. Can we stop him? He's already made the jump. Next closest ship is 3 days behind him. The president sighed. Then we'd better prepare for the consequences. At New Montana, the situation had grown desperate. Steve Garcia watched from the colony's control room as 3 council ships maintained their blockade. Supply ships were turned away. Distress calls went unanswered. Life support at 60%, Maria reported. We've stretched the food by going to half rations. A proximity alarm sounded. A new ship had appeared at the edge of the system. It's the Defiance, Steve shouted as recognition codes appeared on his screen. The massive Earth battlecruiser moved directly toward the blockade. The Council ships immediately began transmitting warnings. This is Captain Joe Williams of Earth vessel Defiance, came the transmission to both the colony and the Council ships. You are illegally blockading the human settlement. You have 10 minutes to withdraw. The Council ships did not move. Instead, they spread out, weapons charging. They're not backing down, Maria whispered. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Williams opened a channel to his crew. This is not what any of us signed up for, he said honestly. But those are our people down there. If we don't stand for them, who will? The Defiance accelerated. When the first Council ship fired a warning shot, Williams responded with precision strikes that disabled its engines but left the hull intact. The battle lasted less than 5 minutes. 2 Council ships retreated with minor damage. The third drifted powerless, but with life support intact. Supply shuttles from the Defiance landed at New Montana within the hour. As the first medical supplies were unloaded, someone began to cheer. Soon, the entire landing area echoed with the sound. Images of the battle and the relief effort spread across human space at light speed. On 100 worlds, humans watched Captain Williams escort hungry children to safety. Back on Earth, reactions were mixed. Military leaders condemned Williams' reckless action. Politicians demanded his court-martial, but public opinion swung strongly in his favor. President Wright watched the footage in silence. Then she turned to her advisors. "The Council has shown its true face," she said. "They targeted civilians to pressure us politically." She stood up. "Contact the Mecteri. Tell them we're ready to discuss specific terms for alliance." Susan Mitchell looked horrified. "Madam President, we can't let one incident." "This is not one incident," the President interrupted. "This is our future if we don't secure our independence. Earth will not be bullied, not by the Council or the Drovari or anyone else." The massive Galactic Council chamber had never seen such chaos. Delegates shouted over each other as the Teleran representative, a tall silver-skinned being, stood at the center platform. "We have evidence," the Teleran said, voice cutting through the noise, "that the surveillance of Earth violated not just human sovereignty, but the founding charter of this council." Screens around the chamber displayed ancient text, the original council agreement from 2,000 years ago. Certain sections glowed red, highlighting restrictions against spying on member species. The humans were not yet members when the program began, argued an insect-like sex troll. "But it continued after they joined," countered the Teleran. "For 27 years, this body has broken its own most sacred laws." Beside the Teleran stood the ambassador from Nithari, a being with flowing green tentacles instead of arms. "We move to formally censure those responsible and offer reparations to humanity." The vote that followed split the council nearly in half. 41 species supported the censure. 43 opposed. 3 abstained. For the first time in 3 centuries, the unity of the Galactic Council had fractured. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Rodriguez led a team of cyber specialists through the Global Communication Network's main hub in Geneva. Reports of strange access patterns had triggered security protocols. "There," said tech specialist Greg Young, pointing to his screen. "Someone's trying to open a backdoor into the quantum relays. If they succeed, they could listen to every transmission on the planet." Lisa leaned closer. "Can you trace it?" Greg nodded. "Already did. The access attempts are coming from Council diplomatic compounds, 7 different locations working together." Lisa's face hardened. "Shut them down. All of them. And alert planetary defense." Within minutes, Earth's entire communication network rebooted with new security protocols. The backdoor attempt failed, but the implications were clear. The Council was still trying to spy on humanity. Back at the Council station, violence erupted in the central plaza. Councillor Vrax of the militaristic Jackson Imperium approached the Teleran delegation as they left the chamber. "Traitor to the Galactic Order," Vrax hissed, his scaled skin flushing red with anger. The Teleran ambassador turned. "The only betrayal is of our founding principles." The words cut off as Vrax drew a ceremonial blade and plunged it into the Teleran's chest. Silver blood spilled onto the polished floor. Alarms blared. Security forces rushed forward. But it was too late for the Teleran ambassador. Within minutes, delegations from 17 species were fighting throughout the station. Security doors slammed shut, separating the warring factions. For the first time in 300 years, blood was spilled in the halls of the Council. On Earth, the first shipment of Mecteri technology arrived at the New Mexico Research Facility. Dr. Ryan Phillips, Earth's leading physicist, carefully opened the sealed container. Inside lay what looked like a simple metal sphere, about the size of a basketball. It had no visible seams or markings. "What is it?" asked his assistant. Ryan checked the Mecteri specifications on his tablet. "According to this, it's an energy core, the power source for their faster-than-light drives." He placed the sphere on a scanning platform. The readings made him gasp. "This can't be right," he said. "The energy output, it's 100 times more efficient than our best fusion reactors." Within hours, research teams around the world received similar packages: weapons technology, medical devices, communication systems. Each package came with detailed instructions for integration with human systems. President Wright received the report in the Oval Office. How long until we can implement these technologies? Defense Minister Paul Bennett smiled for the first time in weeks. The propulsion systems could be integrated into our ships within months, not years. Their shield technology even faster. And weapons? The president asked quietly. With these specifications, we could build defenses that would make the council think twice about those blockades. The president nodded. Begin immediate implementation. Prioritize colony defense systems and supply ships. Susan Mitchell, who had opposed the Mecteri alliance, studied the reports with growing concern. These technologies are changing the balance of power overnight. The council will see this as escalation. The council fired first. President Wright reminded her, "We're just making sure they can't do it again." Across Earth, factories converted to produce new technologies. Engineers worked around the clock. For the first time since leaving the council, humanity's future looked brighter. What no one yet realized was how this rapid advancement appeared to other species watching from the shadows. Earth's new defense satellites had just gone online when the damaged Mecteri scout ship limped into the solar system. Its hull showed massive burn marks. One engine trailed sparks into the vacuum of space. They're broadcasting an emergency signal, reported the duty officer at Earth Defense Command. On the main screen, a Mecteri face appeared. Silver skin was now gray with exhaustion. One of its 3 eyes was swollen shut. "This is Scout Commander Kelvin of the Mecteri Consortium. We bring urgent intelligence. The Drov fleet has launched earlier than our models predicted. Their path will cross through human space in less than 60 days. President Wright ordered an emergency meeting. Military and civilian leaders gathered in the underground war room beneath Washington. The Mecteri scout commander stood at the center, his silver skin still bearing marks of recent injuries. "The Droveri move with purpose," he explained. "They follow a pattern established over 10,000 years. First come scout ships, then resource harvesters, then colony ships." "Do they negotiate?" asked Susan Mitchell. "Never," replied the Mecteri. "All species are classified as either threats to be eliminated or resources to be harvested." "Harvested?" someone asked. The Mecteri touched a device on his wrist. A hologram appeared showing a green planet. As they watched, massive ships descended. Forests disappeared. Oceans drained. Within minutes of accelerated footage, the once living world became a barren gray rock. "They take everything," the Mecteri said quietly. "Water, minerals, organic matter. They process it all for their expansion." "How many ships?" asked Admiral Rodriguez. "Their main fleet numbers in the thousands. The advance force heading toward your colonies includes approximately 100 ships." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Even with Mecteri technology, humanity could not face such numbers alone. President Wright looked at Defense Minister Bennett. "Can we evacuate the colonies in the Droveri path?" "Some," he said. "Not all. We're talking about millions of people." After the meeting, President Wright made a difficult decision. She ordered Ambassador Miller to transmit the Mecteri intelligence data to the Galactic Council, including the classified footage of Droveri harvesting techniques. "They may not believe us," Susan Mitchell warned, "or they may see this as manipulation." "Some will," the president agreed, "but they need to know what's coming." At the council station, the emergency session to view Earth's transmission had to be held in the largest chamber. Every species sent representatives. As the footage of the Droveri harvest ships played, shocked murmurs filled the room. Elder species like the Vexeri seemed less surprised, more resigned. The High Counselor stepped forward after the presentation ended. "We thank Earth for this information. The Council will deliberate on its authenticity and appropriate responses." "Deliberate?" Ambassador Miller's voice rang out. "The Droveri will reach the Proxima colony in 53 days. While you deliberate, millions will die." "We must verify," began the High Counselor. "We don't have time for verification," Miller interrupted. "You spied on us for decades. Use those same resources to confirm our data." Meanwhile, Captain Nicole Foster of the newly retrofitted Earth vessel Horizon, led a reconnaissance mission to the edge of known space. The Horizon now incorporated Mecteri stealth technology, making it nearly invisible to sensors. For 7 days, the Horizon traveled along the projected path of the Droveri fleet. On the 8th day, they found what they were looking for. "My God," whispered Nickel as the ship's sensors detected massive objects moving through space. The main view screen showed black ships shaped like arrowheads, each one bigger than the largest Council battlecruiser. "Count," Nickel asked her science officer. 97 vessels in the advance group," he replied. "And they're harvesting already." The screen shifted to show a small moon being systematically disassembled by Droveri machines. Piece by piece, the celestial body was being consumed. "Send everything we're seeing back to Earth," Nickel ordered. "Maximum encryption." As the Horizon turned to head home, Nickel added, "And prepare a copy for the Council. They need to see this with their own eyes." When the Horizon returned to Earth, Captain Foster's report confirmed humanity's worst fears. The Droveri were coming, and they were exactly as terrible as the Mecteri had claimed. President Wright took the Council Chamber's main platform 2 days later. The entire galaxy watched via quantum transmission. "Earth offers to return to the Galactic Council," she announced. Surprised murmurs filled the chamber before she continued. Under new terms, the Council Chamber remained in session for 7 straight days. Arguments raged. Alliances shifted. No consensus emerged on humanity's terms. Complete military autonomy, an end to all surveillance, and shared leadership against the Droveri. Ambassador John Miller watched the endless debate with growing frustration. Earth didn't have time for this. "We need to try a different approach," he told Linda Hayes as they left the chamber after another fruitless session. "What did you have in mind?" she asked. "If the Council won't act as one, perhaps individual species will." The next morning, Miller sent private messages to 17 species that had shown sympathy toward Earth's position. By evening, representatives from all 17 had agreed to secret meetings. The Tellarran were first. Their new ambassador, still mourning the assassination of his predecessor, listened carefully to Miller's proposal. "An alliance outside Council jurisdiction," the Tellarran summarized. "Bold, possibly illegal under Council law." "The Council is paralyzed," Miller replied. "The Droveri won't wait for them to find consensus." "My people have sensed the darkness beyond the rim for centuries," the Tellarran said. "We will join your alliance." One by one, other species agreed. The peaceful Mecteri, the warrior Krex, the insect-like Zova, even some Vexeri colonies that disagreed with their central government. They called it the Mutual Defense Accord. No bureaucracy, no endless debate, just a simple promise. We fight together or fall together. On Earth, humanity prepared for war. Military academies opened their doors to alien recruits. General Daniel Ramirez, Earth's most decorated officer, found himself teaching combat tactics to beings from a dozen worlds. "The Droveri rely on overwhelming force," Ramirez explained to his mixed species class. "They've never needed subtlety because no one has ever effectively opposed them." A Krex warrior raised a clawed hand. "So we use guerrilla tactics. Hit and run." "Exactly," Ramirez nodded. "They expect submission, not resistance. Every battle plan I've seen shows standard formation attacks. We'll use unpredictable patterns, coordinated strikes from multiple vectors." The training was difficult. Different species had different strengths, weaknesses, and fighting styles. But slowly they learned to work together. Human adaptability paired well with alien specialization. Meanwhile, Earth's shipyards worked at maximum capacity. New vessels incorporating Mecteri technology took shape in orbit. But something was still missing. "The hulls aren't strong enough," Dr. Ryan Phillips explained to President Wright. "Mecteri energy systems are revolutionary, but their metallurgy is similar to ours. The Droveri weapons will tear through them." The solution came from an unexpected source. The Zlorn, humanity's longtime economic rivals, sent a delegation to Earth. "We have watched your preparations," said the Zlorn representative, a stocky being with metallic blue skin. "Your alliance against the Droveri is growing. We wish to contribute." "You're still officially aligned with the Council," President Wright noted cautiously. "The Council debates while the enemy approaches," the Zlorn replied. "We are practical." The Zlorn contribution proved invaluable. Their advanced metallurgical knowledge, developed over millennia of mining throughout the galaxy, created alloys stronger than anything humanity had imagined. Combined with Mecteri energy systems and human weapons design, a new class of warship emerged. They named the first one Unity. At the Council station, the deadlock finally broke. After 16 days of debate, the vote on humanity's terms came down exactly even. 43 for, 43 against, with one abstention. All eyes turned to the High Counselor, the ancient Vexari who had led the Council for 2 centuries. By law, only in the case of a tie could the High Counselor cast a vote. The chamber fell silent as the tall blue-skinned being rose to speak. "For 2,000 years, this council has maintained peace through unity," the High Counselor began. "Today, that unity is broken, not by humanity's actions, but by our own failure to adapt to new threats." The Vexari's ancient eyes surveyed the chamber. "I have served this council all my life. I believed in its purpose, but faced with extinction, we cannot cling to procedure." The High Counselor paused. "Therefore, as my final act as High Counselor, I temporarily cede Council authority to the Mutual Defense Accord until the Droveri threat is resolved." Shock rippled through the chamber. Many delegates shouted in protest. Others sat stunned. A few openly celebrated. A High Counselor raised a hand for silence. "We created this council to preserve life in the galaxy. If we cannot fulfill that purpose in this moment of crisis, we must allow others to try." The combined fleet assembled near Proxima Centauri. 500 ships from 23 species formed a defensive line. At the center flew the human battlecruiser Unity, now serving as the command vessel for the joint force. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez stood on the bridge alongside commanders from 4 allied species. They watched as the massive view screen showed the approaching Droveri fleet. 98 enemy vessels confirmed, reported the Telleran sensor officer. "First wave will reach our position in 20 minutes." Lisa looked at her alien colleagues. Just months ago, they had been strangers, some even enemies. Now the fate of the galaxy rested on their cooperation. "Remember the plan," Lisa said. "We don't need to destroy them all, just enough to make them reconsider." No species had ever successfully repelled a Droveri invasion. The black ships had always overwhelmed their targets with superior numbers and raw power, but they had never faced a prepared, united defense. "All ships, battle positions," Lisa ordered. "May fortune favor us all." As the Droveri vanguard approached, they maintained their traditional arrow formation. Just as human analysts had predicted, they showed no concern for the defending fleet. No attempt at evasive maneuvers. No recognition of danger. "They're not even raising shields," said the Krex commander in disbelief. "They've never needed to before," Lisa replied. "Fire on my mark." The trap was sprung perfectly. As the Droveri ships reached the designated point, the combined fleet launched a coordinated attack from multiple vectors. Human tactical innovation paired with alien technology created devastation. Droveri vessels, caught unprepared, exploded in silent bursts of light. For the first time in recorded history, a Droveri advance stumbled. But the advantage didn't last long. The remaining Droveri ships quickly adapted, raising shields and returning fire with weapons that cut through even Zlorn-reinforced hulls. The battle raged for hours. Ships from both sides were destroyed. The space around Proxima Centauri lit up with weapons fire and the debris of broken vessels. When it finally ended, 37 Droveri ships had been destroyed. The rest retreated to regroup. The defense fleet had lost over 100 ships. Thousands had died, but they had achieved the impossible. They had stopped the Droveri advance. As the Allied fleet regrouped and tended to their wounded, a transmission arrived from Earth. Ambassador Linda Hayes had just finished negotiating the formal dissolution of the Galactic Council in its current form. "The old council is gone," she reported. "In its place will stand the Galactic Concordat. New rules, new structure, equal voice for all species, and ironclad protections for sovereignty." It was a diplomatic revolution to match the military one. The old power structures that had dominated galactic politics for 2,000 years collapsed in days. In their place rose something new, a true partnership of worlds. The Droveri didn't give up. Intelligence suggested they were calling for reinforcements, adapting their strategies. The war had only begun. But now the galaxy was ready. Human predictive systems, enhanced by Telleran psychic insights, anticipated the next Droveri move. The Allied forces set another trap, this time catching the Droveri in a gravity well that disabled half their remaining fleet. 3 weeks after the first battle, President Ellen Wright addressed the newly formed Concordat Assembly. Representatives from all 87 former Council species gathered to hear her words. "We came to the stars hoping for friendship," she began. "Instead, we found distrust. We experienced betrayal. But in crisis, we discovered something greater than the peace we sought. We found unity." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes and equivalent sensory organs of the assembled delegates. "The path that brought us here was painful. Trust was broken. Blood was spilled. But look at what we have built from those broken pieces. A true alliance of equals. A galaxy where strength comes not from control, but from cooperation." The chamber erupted in sounds of approval. Applause from those with hands, humming from those with vibration sacs, light displays from photosynthetic species. Later that evening, John Miller and Linda Hayes stood on an observation deck of the new Concordat station. Through the massive window, they watched ships of countless designs moving in coordinated defense patterns. "Did you ever imagine this when you slammed your hand on that council table?" John asked. Linda smiled slightly. "Not in a million years." "What do you think made the difference? Why did we succeed where others failed?" Linda considered the question. "I think our greatest contribution wasn't our technology or even our fighting spirit," she said finally. "It was our stubborn insistence on both.